our metabolism is how our body uses energy to fuel up and drive around our needs as we go through the day, whether we're listening to a podcast, whether racing to the airport, or whether we're sleeping at night. And that's what metabolism is. It's how our body uses energy. Very similar to when we sit in a car and we're driving our car. Our car uses fuel energy to run its engine so we can get from point A to point B. And we don't think too much about that process. I mean, people who are mechanics know a lot about it. Car geeks know a lot about it. But most people just get in a car and they drive and take it for granted that, like there's a system in place to actually make sure there's enough energy to run the engine. Now, what do we do in the car, driving a car? We take a look at our fuel gauge every now and then. And when our fuel gauge runs low, what do? We pull over to the filling station, right? And we know we got to take the nozzle out, put it into the gas tank, press it, and fill it up. And then when it's filled up, it'll click. And then we put it back and we drive off and we're good, right? Well, actually, our metabolism runs our body, the engine of our body, in very similar ways. So our brain can register when our fuel tank is low. So when I say fuel to run the body's energy, our fuel comes from food. Food that we eat gives us the fuel. That fuel gives us the energy. Now, people call the fuel and the energy units calories, but I don't want people to focus on calories in, calories out, and counting calories. I think that's become really confusing and a little bit more of a cult-like kind of fixation for a lot of people. And actually, it's not a healthy way to think about it. I prefer people to think about, look, when your body knows when your fuel is running low. What do? You don't pull over to the filling station. When your fuel is low, you pull over to the dinner table or to the refrigerator or to a restaurant, so you can eat some food and load up on your fuel. Now, here's where metabolism connects up with body fat. All right. Most people think, if I'm eating, I'm going to get fat. I'm going to gain weight. And that's like how I get fat. Not so fast, Roger Kaputnik. There's actually a connection to this. You need to understand how this normally works in a healthy way. Our body fat's incredibly healthy. So I'm going to bring us back to when you were still in your mom's womb. When your mom's egg met your dad's sperm and they turned into a ball of cells that would be the future you, one of the first tissues that form is your circulation, angiogenesis. And that's because every organ in your body will ultimately need to have a blood supply. The second tissue that forms are nerves. And that's because every organ needs instructions to be sent through this electrical cable that actually tells them what to do. The third tissue that forms is body fat in the womb. So tiny little fat cells form as a third tissue in your body, and they form around your blood vessels. It's like bubble wrapped around your blood vessels. Now, why is that? It's because fat cells, the cells that make up fatty tissue, actually are fuel tanks. Go back to the fuel analogy. And what happens is that when fuel is through food is in your bloodstream, your body packs the fuel from the bloodstream right into the fuel tank, just like you put the nozzle from the filling station into your gas tank. That simple. All right. That's why there's a lot of blood vessels. So you had body fat. Okay. Even before you had a face, you could stuff with food. And fast forward 9 months. All right. When you see a healthy baby, what is a healthy baby? It's a fat, chubby baby with, chubby cheeks, chubby arms and legs. I mean, their arms look like they were the circus animals twisted by a clown, right? I mean, and that's healthy. We know that fat is associated with health. It makes us feel good, and we know a healthy baby is chubby. In fact, if you saw a baby that looked like a fashion model on a runway, chiseled cheekbones, long thin arms, long thin thighs, legs, you would be freaked out. You'd say there's something seriously wrong with this baby, right? And you'd be right. Okay. And so this idea that we associate body fat with something terrible and undesirable is completely wrong. Our body fat is our fuel tank. So
wait, sorry, just when you say completely wrong, so would you object to the idea that my impression is quite well established among metabolic health researchers, that when you have too much body fat, it becomes extremely deleterious to health and drives insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome and overall metabolic dysfunction?
That is completely correct, and I'm in complete agreement with that. What I'm saying about our idea that we only think about fat in reference to when it's in excess, and
Okay.
therefore it must be something that you want to get rid of,
Right.
that is actually overlooking, and therefore wrong, overlooking what its natural normal function is, which is the
Right.
fuel tank. And it loads up on the fuel that our body needs to drive our carcasses around to be able to do the things that we enjoy to make our life meaningful. So what's really interesting when you think about metabolism, it's that process. Now, I'm gonna go right to what you talked about, excess body fat. Okay, so why do some of us develop? Why do some people develop excess body fat? Well, think about it. If you actually were in your car at the filling station, filling up the gas, what happens when your gas tank is full? It fills up, and there's a clicker on the nozzle that will automatically shut off the gas, so no more gas goes in your car when it's full, right? Now our human body doesn't have a clicker like that, so we can sit down to a meal and load up on fuel, i.e., calories, and keep on eating it. Now, here's what happens from a metabolic perspective. I'm trying to explain this in ways that I think are functional and not too scientific, because although I'm a scientist, I like to communicate about these new discoveries in a way that I think makes sense to people who are wondering, like, so how does that apply to me?
Hmm.
All right. So you're eating food, your body is using some of that energy right away. When you eat food, your pancreas secretes a hormone called insulin. Insulin helps draw in energy so your cells have the power to do what it wants to do. It's like you're running onboard motor. Okay. So you can keep on going on idle to do what you do. Anything else, basically your body takes and stores that extra, anything that is not immediately needed into fat, into those little fat cells. Remember, I told you those little fat cells started forming when you were in the womb around blood vessels. So that's where they start forming. Now, the energy that is the fuel that's stored in them, which is fat, fat is fuel, expands the fat cells. So they start tiny, but they can expand 100 times their size as
Mm.
they're filling up with fuel, like a water balloon. Okay. And because we don't have a clicker, if we keep on overloading our body with too much fuel, what happens in a car if the clicker didn't work? The gas tank would fill up, the gas would quickly overflow, run down the side of the car, run down around the wheels, pool around your feet, and start turning into this dangerous, toxic, flammable mess. All
Mhm.
right. Now, in our body, you can't the extra fuel that we might overeat can't evaporate. So our body has to stuff it into fat cells. So imagine the normal fat cells get stuffed with fuel. They get bigger and bigger and bigger, 100 times bigger, and they stop. Oops, you got still some more fuel because you've overeaten. Okay, let's make some more fat cells. So it makes more fat cells, and then the body stuffs it up, blows it up 100 times in size. Oops, still have some more fuel. Let's make another fat cell, blows it up. And you can kind of see over and over, you do this, you wind up developing a bigger fat mass. Now, fat normally has absolutely critical functions in the body. Besides being a cushion, it's actually a space heater, and it can actually burn down fuel when we want it to. So fat can actually burn down fat when it's called into action. We'll talk about that. But the other thing that fat does is it's an organ. It's an organ like your heart, your lungs, your spleen, and that's an amazing thing because it's not just any organ. It's an endocrine organ, which means that it secretes hormones. More than 15 different hormones that fat has been discovered to secrete. And these hormones that normal healthy fat secretes are critical to run your metabolism so you have enough energy at all times. I'll just name three of them. One of them, people may have heard of, called leptin, Leptin. Leptin is sometimes referred to as a satiety hormone. People who don't know what satiety is, it's when you feel full. All right. Some people think it's like a switch off and on. I like people to think about this normal fat hormone made by your fat, healthy fat, actually as a volume control for your appetite. You have less leptin, volume controls goes up. Now you have more appetite. You have more leptin. Your appetite kind of turns down. So it just kind of tunes it up and down. And like that's most hormones. It's kind of an up and down switch, not an on and off switch.
Mhm.
Another hormone that's really important. Have you heard of a hormone called adiponectin?
Yeah.
Okay, so adiponectin turns out If I were to draw a vial of your blood as a doctor and send it to a hospital lab and say, hey, you know what, hospital lab, please measure all the hormones in Ari Whitten's blood sample and tell me what they are. So they'd find adiponectin, but your levels of adiponectin would be 1,000 times higher than every other hormone in your body. Higher than testosterone, higher than thyroid hormone, higher than anything else. You know why? Because this fat hormone made by your normal healthy levels of fat that formed when you were in a womb, that's connected to your metabolism, adiponectin partners with insulin to make your energy extraction from your bloodstream more efficient. When your adiponectin goes up, your insulin works better. All right. And so that's an important gas pedal to allow our metabolism to use our energy. A third hormone, and then I'll stop, is resistin. If adiponectin is the gas pedal, so you absorb more energy more efficiently, resistin is the brake. If adiponectin goes, let's go get some more energy, the brake is the resistin goes, whoa, not so fast. Let's back off a little bit. So again, balance, harmony, control. It's a spectrum. It's like a volume switch on and off or a gas pedal brake kind of deal going on here. That's normal fat. But remember, I told you, if you overeat and your body has to stuff up more and more and more and more fat, it just fills up the gas tank and makes more tanks. All right. What happens is that as that fat mass expands, it outstrips its blood supply. It outstrips, and it has to start angiogenesis, blood vessels. We started talking about it at the very beginning. But the fat can grow much faster than blood vessels can grow to feed it. And so what happens, like a tumor, expanding mass, like a tumor, starts to rot in the middle. It's called hypoxia. It doesn't have enough oxygen. And without enough oxygen, what happens? This thing becomes highly inflammatory. So overeating grows your fat mass, causes your fat to be inflammatory, and especially when it's visceral fat, the kind of fat around your gut packed inside the tube of your body. That inflammation leaked out everywhere into your body. And now you become in a pro-inflammatory state, which we know sets up for chronic disease.